create this through mortise, I'm going to use an antique boring machine. And I'm going to bore several holes along here, and then I'm going to chisel it out, finish the mortise with a chisel. I'm going to bore halfway from each side to ensure that the mortise comes through straight and parallel with the reference face. To line up my boring machine, I'm going to need a center line on the mortise. The Big AL is laid out in half-inch increments. I need a 1/4 inch. I can't use a Big AL. So I use a combination ruler, and I set it for 1.5 inches plus 1/2 inch, which is 1/3. So I set it for 2 1/4. Using the combination ruler, I can now draw a center line on my mortise. Understanding that I don't want the bit of the boring machine to go beyond the end of my mortise, I'm going to lay out the end hole a little further away than 1 inch, than 3/4 inch, 1/2 of 1.5 inches, so that it ensures that the bit won't cut beyond the line. So the first thing I'm going to do is mark it 13/16 on this end, and I'm going to mark it 13/16 on this end, on the center line. Next, I'm going to divide up the remaining distances by 1.5 inch increments so that I have all my hole centers laid out. Using a carpenter's awl, I'm going to mark my locations. So the bit tip will drop right into these. If this was a piece of plain timber for a house, and we'd want no chip outs around the perimeter of the mortise. In order to ensure that we don't chip out, we score the surface of the timber with a knife. This cuts the fibers and prevents any chip out. So we're going to start at the top as my 0 point, and I'm going to scribe from 3 inches. I'm going to scribe from 3 inches to 1.5 inches. To ensure that my knife goes in exactly the correct spot every time, I'm going to lay out the knife by the tape, not by the pencil line. Pencil line was to visualize the joint. So now I have my knife on 10. I come down to 7.5, and I'm going to put my knife in. Set my tape out of the way, bring my straight edge up to my knife, and I'm going to knife 3 times. Once very lightly, second time harder, third time very deep. I can now move my Big AL down and knife my 1.5 inch line and my 3 inch line. Now I have this perimeter of this through mortise on the adjacent face completely knifed. My center line laid out and my tick marks with my dimples for my boring machine bit to drop into. While I have it on the timber here, on the horses here, I'm going to knife a few more joints. Now that I have this location started as my 0 point, transfer that mark around the timber and bring it over here. And I'm going to do the housing perimeter. Guess I got to start again. One teacher told me, oh, you just cut the pencil line in half. Well, I find that very difficult to do. So I like to use a knife, because the knife is absolute. The fibers are cut, and that's exactly where you want your joint to be. Now I'm on the adjacent face, or the opposite adjacent face for the inside of the mortise. I've now knifed the perimeter of the mortise. I also need my center line and my tick marks on this face. Then we can put the timber down onto some shorter sawhorses so that I can use the boring machine. It's important to have the horses the correct height for you to easily work on your timber. I make my own sawhorses. I have them at different heights for different reasons. 13/16. Double check. And 1.5 inches. Double check my overall, 7.5. One last surface tonight. Now that I've knifed all the way around the timber, hopefully I've reduced the risk of chip out. Now I'm going to bring in my shorter sawhorses. I call them ponies. And I'm going to get my boring machine and I'm going to bore these